just in case anyone wasn't here last night, maybe you could mention the new starting time in case they just think we're late.
Ah, yeah. In case you just think we're late.
They might not all be here.
We have a new starting time, which is now 11:15, just to give a little bit more time for various things needing to be done in the mornings.
And a later finishing time. And
a later finishing time, so you still get your full 2 hours value. We're very aware you spent £5 on this retreat. So far. I'm looking at a huge picture of myself, which I could really do without. Excuse me. Yeah, that's better. Hello, lovely people. We will begin by saying hello, good morning, welcome back. And I'm going to ask Vimalachita, whose voice is much better than mine, to lead us in saluting the shrine. Your shrine, our shrine, whichever shrine you want to salute.
Yeah. Saluting the 3 jewels, welcoming them in. So in unison. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sankhaya, Namo Namo, Om Ahom.
Okay, so this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about, and we're going to sort of practice in relation to some of the, I suppose, issues surrounding the mind and thoughts, if you like, the thinking mind and the various levels on which the thinking mind works and how it can help us and how perhaps it doesn't help us. And I'll start with a bit of the tradition. Let's have a very short reading from the Dhammapada. Whatever a hater may do to one he hates, or an enemy to his enemy, a wrongly directed mind will do greater evil. That's the Dhammapada, and then a few centuries later we hear Shantideva in the Bodhicharyavatara saying, rutting elements roaming wild do not cause as much devastation in this world as the roaming elephant, the mind, let free, creates in Avicii and other hells. So serious business. It's interesting. There are various preconceptions about meditation and mindfulness. A lot of people who come on our mindfulness courses come with this ready-made assumption that meditation is about stopping thinking, making the mind go blank. It's one of the kind of tropes, I guess, about mindfulness or about meditation. You don't think, you stop thinking, and you kind of enter some thoughtless realm. In a funny way, it's as if the mind is the enemy. That mindfulness and meditation will save us from. That's not true, as we have to explain, and it can take a lot of explaining. Sometimes even by week 7 or 8 of a course, somebody in an inquiry after a meditation will still complain that they couldn't stop thinking. They couldn't stop their mind. And we have to say, hang on, that wasn't the point. But we do in practice, in our mindfulness practice, our meditation practice, whether in whichever world we're operating, in a Buddhist world or a secular world, we do value the possibility of entering into a new relationship with our mind, a new relationship with the thinking mind, a new relationship with our thoughts. It would be ridiculous to think that thoughts are the enemy. I mean, look at the place we occupy on our planet. We got there because we have the capacity to think, whether it's sort of on a collective level or on an individual level. It's because of thinking, our ability to think. In a way, it's an aspect of our reflexive self-consciousness that we can stand back from experience and consider it. We can think about it. We can form plans, form strategies. We can collaborate with others. We can imagine. We can form values. We can even form ideals. All this, it is a product of the human thinking mind. I just caught a snip of Noam Chomsky in a talk or a conversation Noam Chomsky was having. He suddenly, as an aside, just threw in some research he'd been reading, which suggested that human beings didn't create language or develop language in order to be able to communicate with each other and collaborate and kill a woolly mammoth or whatever. There's research that suggests that thought emerged out of our need to think, that it was thought was, if you like, the technology that allowed us to think and plan and strategize and enter into an entirely new, unprecedented relationship with life. In our inner life, thought plays for most of us, the crucial role. There's an exercise we offer in the second week of a course. I'm not going to ask you to do it, but because of time, but it would have been fun to do that. We invite people to imagine that they're walking down a familiar street, and as they walk along, they see approaching them in the distance a friend. And the friend's coming there towards them on the other side of the road, and they get nearer and nearer until they pass. And as they pass, you're invited to imagine that you are smiling at your friend and waving, but your friend just keeps walking on. And that's the end of the story. And what's interesting then is what follows, which is that we can invite people to just check in on themselves, how they're feeling as a result of doing that very short little imaginary journey, that incident, how they're feeling in their body, what emotions might they be feeling, are they feeling any impulses, any sort of move to do something, and what thoughts are going on. And as we talk, and I've seen people fill a whiteboard with the answers that come up in these sessions. Some people say they feel really sad, their friend didn't see them, a missed opportunity. Other people feel, rejected. They might even be in tears, as they say so. And they'll report, they feel a sinking feeling in their stomach or a tightness in their chest. Other people will be worried about their friend. Oh, are they all right? Other people will laugh because they realize their friend probably forgot their glasses. And so it goes, until you've got 30, 40 sometimes responses up on the whiteboard. And you say, how is this possible? What made the difference in the way you felt about that experience? Why are they so different? And these are feeling responses that you're writing up on the board. And in the end, sooner or later, what somebody will say, it was how I interpreted the experience. It was the thought. Ultimately, it was the thought that defined how we reacted to the experience, the interpretation we put on our friend's failure to respond to us. There's that. I remember my Auntie Celie, an emigre Russian woman, every Christmas would send me 2 or 3 hideous pullovers. And my mother would say, look, Terry, it's the thought that counts. And it is, it's the thought that counts. We are so often led and allow ourselves to be led by our thinking mind. It's going on all the time, making its plans, making its decisions. It's kind of curating our life. our thoughts, are just so familiar to us. In a way, there is this inner companion all the time, advising us, interpreting our experience, guiding us with the assumptions it makes, selecting what we do and don't notice, even in a way. And on another level, and believe me, all this is happening on many, many levels. It's not by any means all conscious and noticeable. It's happening, at lightning speed. We're back to those 47ths of a finger snap. But the mind somewhere is also storing every experience and kind of gradually building up and curating our biography, our story of who we are, what we do, what we like, what we don't like. So it's playing this extraordinarily important part in our kind of inner life. And it's so omnipresent in a way, in whatever level it has, in our hearing, as it were, whether we hear it or not. It's so defining, and it's working so fast that we easily fall into the idea that we are our thoughts. We identify with our thinking self, as if that's the most important part of us, the part that's really guiding, and the rest of our body is just a way of carrying it from place to place, decision to decision. There's a sort of gag that you'll occasionally bump into in this world, which is, what is the most important part of the body? Answer: the brain. Which part of your body is telling you that? Get it? But it's true, we do sort of live and judge and act and decide very much, if not entirely, on the basis of our thinking mind, no matter on what level, how subliminal or how conscious that thinking process is. I've said it's fast, and there's a good question. A, is it too fast? And B, does it really know what it's talking about? Here's another little exercise that we throw at people in our courses, which you can do. I'll invite you to maybe close your eyes and just listen to what I'm saying. John was on his way to school. He was very worried about the maths lesson. He wasn't confident he was going to be able to keep order in the class. After all, that shouldn't have been the caretaker's job. The end. Okay, so there's an immediate takeaway, isn't there, that your mind thought one thing, probably thought John was a boy, a pupil. Not everyone does. Every now and then we'll have a teacher in the class who immediately assumed it was about a teacher, but that's rare. And then as the story unfolds, no, it wasn't a child. You were wrong. Your mind, your thinking mind, threw up the wrong assumption. And then, well, it was a teacher. And then the third one is more like a bit of a slightly jokey giveaway of, once again, you made an assumption, which actually, in the instance of this moment, this experience, this story, didn't happen to be true. What's interesting sometimes when you continue to explore what happened with people in the class, it wasn't just that they had an idea of a pupil, then a teacher, then, caretaker, but they saw the pupil. Although you might have told the story in 10 seconds, they saw a little boy, maybe even saw the color of the blazer and whether or not he had a satchel on his back and what color bicycle it was. It's extraordinary. If you probe, people will be kind of laughing at, they realize of just how rich, richly the mind not only came to a conclusion, boy, but threw up an entire sort of superstructure of images and so on to accompany it, and then on to the teacher and so on. So it's just a real lesson in just how quickly, how instantaneously our minds make assumptions on the basis of even minute amounts of input, but also how the mind might go ahead of itself sometimes and not actually be a fair representation of the reality of the situation. I mean, sometimes our thoughts are not just a bit unreliable. You know, they can be very impulsive, our minds. They can be quite crude. You know, we can make quite snap judgments, quite, a good example is, what we sometimes call catastrophizing. You know, something happens and immediately our mind goes into imagining, well, if this happened, then what if? What if this happens? What if this happens? Our minds are very good at turning is it crises into dramas or dramas into crises? In my mind, both are not very nice. But our minds will leap ahead of themselves. We make assumptions about the person we're talking to. As we talk, our mind is saying, oh, they're not liking this. They're not agreeing with you, or they're flirting with you, or our mind just is throwing up these things, maybe right, maybe wrong. It's astonishing, though, once our mind has set that course, how we'll start acting accordingly, and so on. Rumination that got mentioned yesterday, Vishwapani talked about rumination, that real bugbear in all of our lives, but obviously a major problem. If you're prone to sort of depressive rumination, then the experience of a moment of low mood simply may be because you wake up to a rainy day, but the ruminating mind, if you're triggered, can immediately sort of start building on that and assuming that things are going to go downhill from here, and so on. Our minds, live in the past. They live in an imagined future. It's our minds that can turn, a minor incident into a whole field of blame, of resentment. It's our minds that can hold grudges, and so on. There's a lovely little phrase that I think it might have been coined by one of the psychologists behind the MBCT movement, which is that nothing is so bad that thinking about it can't make it worse. If you think of the hindrances, maybe sloth kind of lives in a world of its own, but ill will, desire for sensuous experience, doubt, restlessness and anxiety, yes, they have their physical components, but again, it's the mind that probably is what disturbs and interrupts and takes over our meditation practice. Thought, of course, is in the sort of model of the Bahiya Sutta, moving from raw input of contact and the raw primary experience of Vedana, of pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, with a little bit of absolutely basic labeling, can trigger then, a whole concatenation of previous assumptions and experiences and underlying tendencies, which once they hit our ability to think, proliferate into, who knows what, who knows where. So, when we're talking about the second arrow, as we have been on this retreat, then when the Buddha talks about somebody who is struck by an arrow, getting lost in sorrow, grief, and lamentation, what he's talking about are the thoughts. Thoughts can be images, they can be, they can be an emotional tone, a thought in a way on this level as a mind product can be a mood. All these things are generated by our thinking mind. And so the second arrow is, largely composed and curated and dictated by the thinking mind. So for all its benefits and dazzling advantages, the thinking mind, it's a bit like we're living with a frisky puppy or a wild monkey, and sometimes with a dictator, a tyrant, and sometimes even with a maniac. But that's not where it ends. It doesn't have to end there. As I say, I'm giving perhaps, to the point of getting this across, a kind of rather gloomy picture of that pole of the mind's possibility, of that pole of our experience, our sort of mind-directed experience, which can take us to dark places or merely keep us in a state of ignorance, of just living reactively, to experience on the basis not of what's actually out there, not on the basis of things as they really are, but on our constantly filtered idea of how things are. So let's cheer ourselves up with readings from exactly the same places, from the Dhammapada. The verse that follows the one I read to you a few minutes ago goes, "Neither father nor mother nor any other relative will do someone so much good as a well-directed mind." And Shantideva goes on, "But if the roaming elephant, the mind, is tethered on every side by the cord of mindfulness, every danger subsides, complete prosperity ensues." So there's the difference. A tamed mind, is an abundant resource. To have access to a calm, directed mind, able to think calm, directed thoughts, it is a wonderful gift that, sometimes, some people we might know live with, some of us maybe experience very occasionally. I remember being amazed in a conversation with Bhante where he told me that he would enter into his diary a time when he would think about something, getting so many letters from so many people around the world, as I suspect quite a few people in this Zoom room, fully aware. There can be so many calls on our attention, so many things to think about, different levels, different people, different universes, and how do we deal with that? Can we sort of maintain a sense of order, deal with things when we feel ready, when the situation's ready, or do we feel ourselves sort of floundering around, impulsively trying to answer all these demands with a mind that sometimes might be quite good, quite intuitive, quite clear, and other times maybe not so. Of course, again, another argument about, this idea that the mind is evil and that thinking is evil is to remember that the first dhyana, the first stage of meditative absorption, is the only one of the 8 rupa and arupa dhyanas in which discursive thought is still possible, where we can still reflect, still contemplate. And if, the tradition, shows the Buddha, for example, when he dies, he doesn't, traverse all 8 dhyanas and die in the 8th dhyana, blast himself, as it were, from the launch pad of the 8th dhyana into something beyond. No, he goes up through the dhyanas and returns to the first dhyana and dies in the first dhyana. In Sangharakshita's view, ideally, if you're a Buddhist, you should live in the first dhyana, just by the way. And he said, don't think the first dhyana is, some highfalutin spiritual metaphysical state. It's a state of freedom from conflict, emotional and psychological integration, and mental lucidity, where you're able to think clearly and, in a sense, move into a deeper realm than ordinary thought, into a realm of contemplation, on out of which deeper seeing, deeper apprehension can arise. As our minds settle, as we train our minds to settle, as like the Fletcher, trains the shaft of an arrow as they make it. It's the image given by the Dhammapada. The mind is something to be trained, something to be sculpted, put into its proper shape for use. As we go about that, then our mind, among other things, it just starts to take its place. It takes its place in the order of things. We start to have some choice in relation to our minds. choice as to whether we're going to believe our minds, choice as to how dominant it's going to be, how loud it's going to be shouting into our heads as we go about things. It's kind of interesting if you did that exercise that Vishwapani led yesterday. He encouraged us or invited us to take up in our mind a thought, about something that, or a memory of something that triggered us. And once we got it going, once we built up a bit of charge through thinking about it, he invited us to move down into our body to locate the sensations that echoed that charge, that were expressive of that charge. In fact, quite possibly the charge was a representation of that the real business was going on, not in our mind, but somewhere else. And that step out of the mind, out of the memory, out of the past, into the present moment experience of the body, where we have a chance to work on it directly by softening, by holding with kindness and so on, is often incredibly surprising. To realize that we don't always have to solve things in the mind, that there is what John Kabat-Zinn sometimes refers to as the innate wisdom of the body. There is more to us than the thinking mind, then there is more to life than always being lost in and guided by the past. One reason why we do the body scan practice is to just develop that skill, not of thinking about our body. And it's amazing how, as Vimla Chitta mentioned a few days ago, how much, how difficult it is for people to stop thinking that the body scan is a mental journey. But to learn the skill of entering into the body as the body, the feelings of the body in the body. This is the crucial work that we're learning, because it's so liberating as a way of, if not challenging the thinking mind, but creating that bigger container, which can hold our thinking mind and our thinking self. And so to practice, to try and cultivate this bigger container, to try and cultivate that clarity, to cultivate choice, to find ourselves moving towards the kind of mind that is living closer to the state of the first jhana, there are practices. And we're all familiar with at least one of them, the mindfulness of breathing. In a minute, I'll lead a version of it, where, we won't use the counting, not that, I'm against counting, but I'll just guide it gently. And in a way, what we're doing in this practice, it's kind of easy to think of the mindfulness of the breath as an exercise, in the will, and maybe it does take a bit of will, to start, to get our attention out of many other things into something as subtle as the breath. But if we can approach it a little bit less desperately, just as an experiment, what would happen if, I just tried to rest my attention on the breath? If I just let go of, the thoughts that are coming, I don't have to crush them. I don't have to be kick them out of the way. But just when I realize, I've lost the breath, I just come back to it. In a sense, each time we do that, we sometimes talk in the mindfulness world of developing a mindful muscle. But another way of seeing it is it's a blow for freedom. It's not that we're saying the breath is bad. We're just saying, no, at the moment, I'm just doing something else. I just want to come back to the present, back into my breath, and adopt that kind of attitude. And doing that, we gradually start to savor the difference between being constantly tied up and tangled up in thought, and what's it like to have a clearer mind that's operating in a different way and operating in the present. Through doing this, and then I'll introduce a couple more practices where, first of all, working with sound, a dimension of our experience which is, if you like, out there. It is something. And I'm going to suggest when we do that you unmute yourselves for this part of the practice, just so there's a bit of background room. It might be you live in a noisy house with somebody using a digger outside your window, in which case you might, want to you might not need that, but just a little bit of sound to work with, to see if we can move into a relationship just with something as simple as sound, which is less grabby, less driven by, you know, the selective processes, the labeling processes, the judging processes of the thinking mind. Just able to allow the experience of sound as sound to simply pass through us. And then in the third meditation, short meditation we do, I'll be inviting you to see if you can do the same thing with the activity of your mind. You know, the thoughts, the images, the intuitions, the judgments, the subliminal judgments and judgments of judgments that are going on. Is it possible to relax your way into a kind of that place of holding the activity of the mind? You know, a kind of an awareness that is bigger than your ordinary thinking mind, to just touch that. Of course, there's Bahiya of the bark garment, and the Buddha's instruction to Bahiya. I imagine you're all familiar, but I'm just going to finish with just a reference to Bahiya. I don't think I can promise I can take you there in a few minutes, but just, you know, there's the story of this man who really desperately wanted a teaching from the Buddha. That's all you need to know for now if you haven't heard the story. And he finds the Buddha and eventually persuades the Buddha, who's busy with doing other things, but he very persuasive, give me a teaching. So the Buddha finally turns around, faces him head on and says, then Bahiya, you should train yourself thus. In reference to the seen, there will be only the seen. In reference to the heard, only the heard. In reference to the sensed, only the sensed. In reference to the cognized, only the cognized. That is how you should train yourself. You know, so it's an invitation to direct, you know, finding his way to just direct, if you like, non-dual experience without the intervention of the mind. And it's interesting, this word cognize, which is sometimes translated as thought, sometimes as imagination. You know, the Buddha's not saying thought isn't there. He's simply saying see thought as thought. You know, thought is there, you know, but it's only thought. You know, it's a phrase we use in the mindfulness scene. You know, thoughts are not facts, even those thoughts that tell you they are. You know, thoughts are just thoughts, as the Buddha says in his teaching to Bahiya. But he goes on and says, when for you there will be only the seen in reference to the seen, only the heard in reference to the heard, only the sensed in reference to the sensed, only the cognized in reference to the cognized, then Bahiya, there is no you in connection with that. When there is no you in connection with that, there is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder, nor between the two. This, just this, is the end of suffering. Because, you know, the mind doing this work, as I said, all the time it's working, helping us plan, helping us avoid threats, whether true or imagined and so on. It's also, in a way, providing this constant feedback that we are in relation to the world in a way that's all about us. You know, the mind is just constantly talking about our relationship with the world. It's not talking about the world in general. It's constantly looking after us, and good for it. But by doing so, it's constantly affirming our centrality, our preeminence, our importance, and you know, in a way, our permanence, in the face even of the fact that we're impermanent. It's the job of the mind to do that. But you know, it's important to recognize, as the Buddha is suggesting, that this way we constantly coach every bit of our experience, everything we see, perceive, imagine, with ourselves, you know, is a core element. You know, what people sometimes these days talk more and more of as the selfing process. You know, that process is that just gnawing away at every bit of experience and packing it into a stronger and stronger and more stable and secure illusion of a self at the heart of it all. But maybe that takes us a little bit further than we're likely to go this morning, but you never know. I'm going to suggest that we take a short break, maybe just 5 minutes, just to have a pee or something, and then I'll lead us into the first meditation. So in 5 minutes, so I make it now 22 minutes past, so let's say 27 minutes past, we're back. Just a very short break. Yep.
Are you muted?
One minute. Okay, so if you'd like to just settle into your chosen posture. There will be other breaks between the practices, so if you need to do other things. So just settling in and making that initial connection with just the straightforward sense input of your being here, the sense of your feet resting on the floor if they are, or maybe against a sofa or a bed. Your body being held in a chair, the contact between your bottom and the seat, the pressure, the contact, maybe a sense of warmth. And maybe take those 2, 3 slightly more intentional, slightly deeper breaths. And just letting go of the words for now, the ideas. Letting go of any need to hold that in place and just arriving, just feeling yourself arrive with each out breath more and more here, now as you are, as you find yourself in your body, in your heart, in your mind. It can be quite a nice and sometimes revealing thing to do as we start to just check that you're not climbing into some idea of yourself as the meditator. A little process of just selection going on of which self it is that's sitting there, and just relax all that and just be completely open to how you actually are, how you feel. This is the material you're working with. This body, this mind. Maybe this mind's a bit busy, a bit dark, a bit tight, or maybe very open. Just ready to give it a go. Just including just the sense of the room you're in, its temperature, any sounds, sense of other people in the house maybe. You're not trying to block anything, reject anything. And when you feel ready, just seeing if you can notice where you can feel the movements, the sensations of the breath most clearly at the moment. It might be different for each of us. It's maybe down in the abdomen, maybe in the chest. Maybe it's how your back moves against the back of a chair, or how the air moves in your nose. So just receiving whatever messages you're getting from your body. And when you locate them at the sensations that seem clearest, most clearly located, And just forming the intention to let that place be the kind of the anchor point, the place we rest, or you rest your attention on. Breath after breath, just noticing the texture of them, the depth or shallowness of them, not trying to make them any particular way, just absolutely as each breath comes. And just see how close you can get to those sensations, or how closely you can hold them, or hold yourself close to them. Be them. And probably by now, at least some of us have been taken away by a thought, maybe briefly, maybe on a very long journey. Quite different places, one thing after another. And so it's just simple. Just whenever we realize that's happened, well, in realizing it, we're already back in the present. So it's just a matter of escorting your attention back to that resting point, back to the next breath. No stress, no judgment. It's just learning. Shaping that arrow. You just see if you can bring a beginner's mind to it. Because what's this breath like? It's not just another breath, it's this breath, this in breath, this pause, this out breath. Is it long? Is it short? Shallow, deep, rough, smooth? And just always that readiness to come back to the breath. There's no need to wonder how it happened or when it happened. if you went off. Just be glad to be back. Congratulate yourself. Just find your way back to the breath, back to that place, those sensations. This breath right now, it's always just this breath. You might want to just expand the frame of your attention. You're taking in other sensations of the breath. Just enjoying a fuller, richer immersion in those sensations. Just letting them speak to you, come to you. Thoughts bubble up. Maybe there's just a very quiet, persistent commentary on the way the practice is going. Maybe a kind of level of judgment somewhere in there, maybe not. Or maybe just an enormous fantasy or memory comes striding in. Just maybe if you want to just say thinking, just acknowledge it's a thought, nothing more, nothing less, just a thought. As you return your attention to the sensations in your body as each breath comes and goes, this breath right now. Sensations in the belly, the chest, the nose. Maybe the brush of air against our top lip. Movement in the shoulders, the back. Maybe there's other places that we met the other day. But what is your experience right now? Your richest experience of this breath, this one now. And whether your mind is very calm and just occasionally taking you off for a little while, or maybe your mind is being very insistent with other ideas, other thoughts, thoughts about the practice, about the retreat, about a football game you're going to watch. Just Just thought. It's light as air, lighter than air, lighter than this breath. Anyway, the more times you train yourself to just come back into the present, back into the breath, the more you learn. Nothing's wasted. And just expanding that frame now to take in the whole of your sense of sitting here, all the different nerve endings sending messages of contact, of pressure, of comfort, discomfort, pleasant, unpleasant, temperature, moisture, energy. At the heart of it, those movements of the breath, this breath still, always new. And the mind just doing what minds do, trying to work out how to help. It's not wrong, it's not bad. We're just learning the skill of stepping out, just recognizing its lightness. That thoughts are just thoughts. And just enjoying maybe this sense. Maybe it's enjoyable, maybe for some of us it's uncomfortable, this sense of being a body, inhabiting a body, a breathing, living body, feeling even the nourishment maybe as each breath comes. Maybe it's just a subtle sense of nourishment. We're not needing to reject thought or push thought away, fight it. You know, thoughts come and go like everything else, and it's just when we realize where we are, we're back. Just reinvesting in that. Just adjusting the frame of our attention to what's happening, what's here, what's now, what's felt. Just savoring that difference maybe. Now just releasing that sense of doing a practice, just allowing our attention now to just take in simply being here, absorbing. Just as we are. How the practice has left us, maybe how it's affected or not, just the way we're holding our thoughts in our total sense of ourselves. And then bringing this session to a close. Maybe having a little movement of fingers, shoulders, twitching your nose, just whatever. And now we'll take a 15-minute break and give you time to have a cuppa if you want. We'll be back at 5 past. So we'll start again at 5 past and move into these other two practices. So yeah, just however you want to spend the time. One more minute. Okay. As I say, if a few of you, I mean, not if you live in a very noisy place, but if a few of you just want to unmute yourselves, maybe not all, but so it may be a few noises around, a few random noises. I don't know, but some of you might live with double glazing. Ideally, if you're going to talk, probably best to mute yourself. So we'll sort of reconnect with the breath, and then I'll sort of guide us into this practice of just opening to sound, just seeing what it's like. There might be sounds around you in your area, or sounds coming off the screen. Just recognizing sound isn't something you can predict or plan for. It's just going to be totally out of your control. And just seeing if you can notice, the play of your mind in relation to sound. See if you can, if it's possible, just for a little while to receive sound as just sound. Notice that the mind will probably want to label, probably want to judge, maybe, if it's sound. Is it possible to just hear sound as pitch, tone, volume, and so on? Just rest in that space. And if it's a little bit vague, your breath is there, your feet are on the floor to be an anchor, that can just hold that sense of your presence, and see if you can just contain sound as it comes towards you, but in a way almost let it pass through you. You might notice the way your mind almost tries, even on this very, very slight level, to grasp it or cling to it, or, oh, I liked that sound, but I don't like that sound. Or you sit there hoping for another experience of a sound that happened a minute ago. Maybe just notice the way your mind just tries to get in and fix things and intervene and interact with things. But what happens if you can just be lighter than that? Just notice, notice the activity of the mind. Maybe as a sort of naughty monkey, or as a crowd of boisterous schoolboys, or in whatever coloured blazers. And just it's an experiment. Approach it quite playfully, and just see how easy, how possible it is to experience sound just as sound. So I'd like to just settle into your place, your posture. And yeah, if you are unmuted, and if a bulldozer starts wrecking your house, it'd be good to just turn your sound off. But we'll work with the kind of, hopefully, just a little bit of what we just call background atmos. Vijayamala knows what I mean. So just starting with just checking in with our body sitting here, reconnecting with that sense of simple presence in our body. Feet on floor, bottom on chair. Sensations of contact, weight, pressure. Finding the breath. Just maybe starting with the breath where you feel it most clearly. And just securing yourself. Available anchor that's there if you need it. And again, just checking in that you're just relaxed about this. You're just being yourself sitting here, nothing special. Just you, your senses, your room, your body. And when you feel ready, just seeing now if you can make sounds, the sounds that come your way. You know, the kind of the focus of your attention. Sounds in your room, in your house, sounds of your own body, your own breathing. Maybe sounds coming off the screen, off your computer. Maybe already you notice how your mind is labeling, maybe pictures, creating a landscape. It's not wrong. It's evolved for millions of years to be able to do that. But just for a while, just seeing if it's possible to receive sound in a different way, or at least notice how the mind gets involved, or wants to get involved in different ways, on different levels maybe. because of the invitation I gave to unmute some of the computers. You're not noticing the sounds that are just happening around you. Just seeing if you can just be open, noticing any preference, any selections you're making that you don't need to make. Just being at the center of your own soundscape. Environments, but you might notice if there's not much sound, there might be a kind of thought that's frustrated, wanting more. Maybe there's some recurring sound that the judgmental voices carping about. Just noticing those thoughts bubbling up and down. Just being ready to return, if you can, to just the pure fact of sound as sound. And of course, there could be thoughts that just come barging in, totally unrelated to the practice. Maybe they have been all along. Maybe they're about the practice in a sort of more conceptual way, or maybe they're about something else, a memory, fantasy. Just thoughts. Just spare energy. In the same way, if that happens, or when you realize that's happening, just bringing yourself in your own time just back to the focus of your attention on thoughts. Doesn't matter if you have to do this 5 times or 100 times. It's all good, it's all practice. Here to go. It's just an experiment. Just see what happens if you set up this intention. Releasing that focus on sound, just relaxing it and just maybe just staying in your body with your breath for a little while. And then releasing even that and just giving yourself a few moments just to sit here. Just being you as you are. A little stretch, a twiddle of the fingers, toes, whatever. We'll pause for a moment, and the next sort of meditation formal will start at 7:30 in 7 minutes. In between now and then, you might want to see what it's like to do what we just did, but with maybe just, if you're not doing something else, just sit in a different corner of your room, just open your eyes and take in just what you see, and just see if you can see your room, but in a new way, without your assumptions, your judgments, your normal ideas about it, just as shapes, color, like an image, like a picture. It just might be an interesting thing to do, to just see if it's possible to just see the familiar as something new, fresh. And again, maybe just notice how your mind tries to get involved. Up to you. Might be something to do, but we'll be back and starting again in 7 minutes. 7:30. Maybe just look at this screen. Color, sound, shape. Just 1 minute. Okay, so as you become ready, you can just settle into your favoured posture. Maybe just take those 2 or 3 breaths, and with the out breath, just feel yourself settling, arriving more securely in your cushion, your chair, your bed, just however you are. Maybe to see if you can tune in to the sense of how those minutes, those 7 or 8 minutes, might have changed the tone, the feeling tone of your mind. Just the sense of being you. Is there a consistency, a follow through, or are you having to find your way back through a thicket, a jungle of thoughts and activities? Kind of change the internal landscape and scenery. Is it just taking your time? It's just you as you are, and you don't have to immediately find your way back to maybe if it was a refined state you were in before. It's just you as you are now. So just accepting that. This body, this moment, these breaths, this mind. But just for a few minutes, we'll just let our breath and body be the kind of the resting place. In your own way, whether you want to just come to rest on a particular set of sensations as the breaths come and go, or if you want to just sit, just finding your way to feeling embodied, present in your body. All its sensations, for better and worse, comfortable, uncomfortable, tight, relaxed, just however. And even as you sit here, just connecting with yourself, there's probably just a train or various trains and strains of thought about settling down, thought about the practice, thought about what you're doing next, and who knows what else. Layers of it. Just see now if you can just open your mind like a net, or your awareness like a net, to just receive the activity, the chatter. Don't have to interfere with it. Might be that the moment you try and do this, you find you've stopped thinking, or think you have. Maybe there's just a kind of subliminal questioning. What am I doing? What am I meant to be doing? Little voices here and there. Maybe there's a judging voice, some kind of headmaster figure leaning on you, judging whether you're doing it or not. Maybe there's a nice movie being cranked up of something you're doing this afternoon, something you did yesterday. Maybe it's not a matter of stopping thoughts when they come, but finding a way of being with them. Maybe as if you're watching them unfolding on a screen. Or hearing them like voices in another room, or just a tinny radio that's on somewhere a little way off. Some people find it helpful to imagine a torrent of thought like a waterfall you're just standing behind. If it helps. And just finding your own way of just receiving, noticing the activity of your mind. Just that slight shift to a stance of witnessing. Maybe you catch a thought as it's just emerging. Maybe you realize you've had one as it leaves your attention, puts you back down. If it feels very vague, you can just maintain that sense of sitting here, the breath coming and going. Just securing your anchor in the present, your body, your breath. And just seeing thoughts as thoughts, just the activity of the mind in its own doing its own thing. Not quite so dominant, maybe not quite so much at the center of us, our sense of ourselves. You don't have to stop it, don't have to start it. You just notice it. An aspect of our experience. Maybe you notice that there are recurring thoughts. Maybe something you'll reflect on later, but for now it's enough to notice. Or maybe it's like a train of thoughts, how one thought leads on to another, taking you on journeys. How interesting to notice this, just unfolding in real time as the breaths come and go, body breathes. Releasing now that focus on thought. Probably doesn't mean you'll stop thinking, but just allowing yourself now to just rest in your body, rest in your breath, rest in just you as you are. Breaths, body, thoughts, sensations. Just being with that. And just holding yourself with a lot of kindness, a lot of affection. And then in your own way, in your own time, just bringing this session to a close. Maybe a stretch, a wriggle, whatever you need. want to post anything on the chat line, you're welcome. Don't feel you have to. And we will be back together at 3:30 for some movement, which I think Sona will be leading us in. Thank you all. See you later on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nagabodhi. Very inspiring this morning.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nagabodhi.
Thank you.